malevolence and the court's forbidding color scheme. He'd never been claustrophobic, but the weight of so much hatred had almost crushed every bone in his body. The jangle of keys brought him back from that dangerous edge, and Neil turned, startled. Wymack had gone into the locker room ahead of him and was unlocking his office door. Although they were the only two here, except for the security guard making obligatory rounds somewhere, Wymack had locked the office in his short absence. Neil had been in there enough times to know Wymack didn't keep anything particularly valuable on his shelves. The only thing of any import was Neil's duffel, which he'd tucked into the office corner before heading to the court. On Neil's first day in South Carolina, he had asked Wymack to protect his things, and 7 months later, Wymack was still keeping that promise. It was almost enough to make Neil forget all about Riko. Wymack stepped aside and gestured for Neil to help himself. In the short time it took Neil to pick up his bag and sling the strap over his shoulder, Wymack disappeared. Neil found him in the lounge, sitting on the entertainment center to one side of the TV. Neil held onto his bag strap for courage and went to stand in front of him.
"Kevin called me yesterday morning when he couldn't get a hold of you," Wymack said. "He wanted to make sure you were okay. Apparently he knew all along where you were."
There was no point in lying, so Neil said, "Yes."
"I made him tell the others,"
Wymack said, and Neil's heart stopped. He opened his mouth to protest, but Wymack held his hand up and kept going.
"They needed to know what they're coming back to, for your sake. Think for a moment how they'd react if they came back to this with no warning. You flounder when they call you friend. You'd probably have a psychotic break when they freaked out over you."
Neil wanted to argue with that. The best he managed was an unconvincing, "I was figuring something out."
"You were stalling," Wymack accused him. "So I did it for you. I told them you look like you've gone 6 rounds with a Sasquatch and said you probably wouldn't want to talk about it. They promised not to smother you, but I don't know if they'll keep that promise when they see you up close. This, though, I didn't tell them about."
He gestured vaguely at his own face. Neil touched the bandage on his cheekbone that hid his new tattoo. "This?"
"All of that,"
Wymack said, and nodded when Neil moved his hand to his hair.
"I don't know why Riko did it, but I'll wait for my answers. What you tell them is on you."
It was almost enough to thaw the ice in his chest. Neil didn't know what to say, so he nodded and looked at the clock. He didn't have to pick the others up from the airport because Matt had paid to leave his truck in long-term parking. Neil was supposed to meet them at Fox Tower, but if they were just now getting their bags, it'd take them another 20 minutes or so to get to campus from Upstate Regional.
"Should I come with you to referee?"
Wymack asked. "To the dorm?" Neil asked. Wymack spared Neil a brief, pitying glance.
"I meant to Columbia."
Andrew was being released today. As soon as the others dropped their things off at the dormitory, they'd be on their way to East Haven Hospital. It had been 7 weeks since the Foxes last saw him, and nearly 3 years since Andrew was clean. 2 of them knew what Andrew was like when stone-cold sober. The others knew only unpleasant rumors and speculation. It was highly unlikely Andrew would care that Neil was half-carved to pieces, but Neil had broken his promise to stay by Kevin's side in Andrew's absence. Neil doubted Andrew would take that well. Despite that, Neil wasn't concerned.
"We'll be fine. If not, at least Abby will be back in town tomorrow to patch you up."
Wymack checked his watch and slid off his perch.
"Let's get going, then."
It was a short drive to the athletes' dormitory. The parking lot behind Fox Tower was mostly deserted, but a couple of the Foxes' cars were still parked there. Supposedly, security guards made rounds to ensure the cars didn't get broken into during their owner's absence, but Neil still had Wymack pull up next to Andrew's car. He tried the door handles first, then checked the windows for cracks or vandalism. He kicked the tires and decided them satisfactory for the trip. Wymack waited with his engine idling until Neil was done.
"Do I need to stay?"
Wymack asked. "I'll be fine," Neil said. "I'll have Kevin call you when we've got Andrew."
"Charge your phone and call me yourself," Wymack said. "Good luck."
He pulled away and Neil went into the dorm. The hallway smelled faintly of air freshener and cleaners. Someone had been by during the break to tidy the place up. His room was on the 3rd floor, the furthest of the Foxes' 3 rooms from the stairs. He let himself in, locked the door behind him, and made a slow lap of the suite. Finding nothing out of place, he